Okay, everybody, we are now live, which means, hello there, welcome along. We'll give it a couple of minutes to get everyone settled and allow everyone to kind of spread the word, of course. And of course, gives me a chance to thank all our Patreon supporters because they are the people that allow us to keep doing what we do. So we appreciate every single donation, every single bits and pieces that you do and allow us to keep doing what we do. So, the people on screen at the moment, you are our godsend, our lifeline. So thank you very much indeed for all of your support. What else? Yes, we did have that slight cross wires hiccup with our guest last week, which I was looking forward to. You don't get the chance to speak to George C. Romero every day of the week. However, a couple of cross wires. We are going to get that interview sorted out as soon as we possibly can. Best thing to do is, of course, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It tells you when we're going to be going live. We've got an incidental episode happening next Saturday as well, so you'll know when we're going live on that one. If we do decide to do a drop-in, a kind of an incidental episode, just surprising you and me, by all means, do hit the notification bell. It lets you know when we're going live. And yes, looking forward to doing this. And we've also got ourselves a couple of changes to the back end of the year in terms of what we've got planned for a couple of episodes. I am wanting to take a couple of days, obviously, to celebrate the holidays. We'll tell you more about that on the way. Yeah, we've got lots of stuff planned, certainly for 2021. Looking forward to it. But certainly the guests that we've had for this year have absolutely blown me away. If you'd have told me this time last year, the guests that we've had over the last 12 months, it's just been incredible. And I think we've also got ourselves a cracker for today. So looking forward to talking to Amanda Deibert. And we're going to do that after this. Oh, hello there. Yes, that would be me, wouldn't it? This is why I have to turn that camera on. Hello there. Welcome along to Talkin Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. My name's Len Sultana, and this is where each and every Sunday we talk Comic-Cons, con culture, and all the stuff and nonsense that we get to enjoy at such shows. We have been running our shows midweek as well throughout the course of UK Lockdown 2 here in the UK. But that's all done and dusted now. We are going to be just doing the Sunday shows between now and Christmas, with a couple of incidentals thrown in for good measure. So thank you very much indeed for supporting the podcast and the live streams over the course of the 2020, because it's safe to say this has been a trying year for a lot of people. I've been using the podcast kind of to mark time, and it's definitely the highlight of my week. So it's been a pleasure to do the shows for you, and I'm really glad that you've been responding so well to them. As always with them, it is a round table. This is your show, which means if you do have any questions for our guests, do jump in. We've got two today. One's going to be joining us a little bit later because he wants to talk about Godfather, because any opportunity that Mark Searby gets to talk about Al Pacino, he's a happy bunny. So that's what we're going to be doing a little bit later. But we have ourselves a special guest for today. And I want to make sure I'm pronouncing her second name right. Is it Deibert?
It is Deibert. That's perfect.
You see, every once in a while, you never know. Just every once in a while, something just kind of like trips me up. But excellent stuff. Amanda Deibert's joining us. Thank you very much indeed for coming along. It's a pleasure to talk to you. As always, like I say, everyone, if you do have any questions for Amanda, do dive in. But I do want this to be very much a conversation, just because with a couple of the guests that I've been having on over this year and over the course of the last couple of months, certainly, it's with a very specific agenda in mind. It's to talk about a specific project. It's to talk about something that's up and coming that they want to promote, and that's all fine and good. But the thing with yourself is you've got so many. You're spinning so many plates. That means we can kind of like relax and we can talk about all sorts of bits and pieces.
Yes.
So that's where we are with that. Now, Amanda, you may know as a writer for many mediums, and you may know of her from her work on DC Superhero Girls, Wonder Woman, and also she's in the writing room for He-Man and Masters of the Universe, which is Kevin Smith's project for Netflix. But
I'm actually doing not the Kevin Smith one. There's two. It's so confusing. Netflix is doing two He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So there's literally no reason that you should know which one it is.
It's fantastic. It's like going into a shop and just going, well, I'm not too sure on the flavor of that one. Pasta or pizza? It's still Italian, but I'll have the pasta. Okay, fine.
Exactly. So there's Kevin Smith's, which is I think kind of more towards maybe a fan base that's more closer to our age, nostalgic, like looking for sort of something very similar to the one that we grew up with in the 80s. And then there is the one that I'm writing on, which is geared towards children now. So that'll be a cartoon for my daughter to watch. So there's two.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, to be fair, actually, I think that's the more interesting project because it is kind of reinterpreting a world that was originally designed as an adaptation of a toy line, effectively, for a period when things have moved on and people, because it was about an established toy line and it was a kind of multimedia thing. Now it's a case of you're having to kind of really push a story, and I think it's an interesting project. So that's cool. Now, the way that I've been starting this run of shows is with 3 questions. So we might as well dive into that. Number 1 is, do you have your brew to hand? What is your beverage of choice for a cup of tea for today? Do you have
It's coffee. It's coffee.
Okay.
Though I do love tea, and when I do, I'm particularly fond of just some Yorkshire tea. But this is coffee this morning because that's what I need to get me through.
Fair enough. Had a little bit of dispute this week because my wife has become a bit of a tea aficionado, at which point she organised her tea cupboard with all of her green teas and all of her herbal teas and stuff. And then she almost put a lock on the door saying, no, you get the Yorkshire tea and nothing else. This is mine. I got locked out of the equation on that one. It's terrible. Number 2. Can you remember your first Comic-Con that you went to? And did you go as a pro or did you go as a fan?
Yes, I can. Actually, the first Comic-Con that I ever went to was the first time that I was visiting my then long distance girlfriend, Kat Staggs, my now wife, in Texas. It was probably, I guess technically it was our 3rd date. She had flown out here to Los Angeles 2 times to hang out with me. And then I flew to Texas and went to a small Comic-Con in Texas with her in Dallas. And so I went as a pro's girlfriend. So a fan who was very much a fan who got to meet people, but I also got to sit on the other side of the table and marvel at her talent and watch her do her thing. So it was a little bit of a foot in both worlds.
That's cool. And not only that, but like I say, you also get the chance to step away from the table and kind of do a bit of exploration and get an idea of from both sides of the table. I think that's really cool.
And then same when I went to San Diego Comic-Con for the first time, it was also at that point as like her sort of longer term girlfriend. So it was that same little bit of both.
Yeah. Is that the kind of situation as well that you, because I've had this with Caroline as my significant other, my much better half. When I've been going to cons, say as a panel host, she's kind of slipped into a de facto kind of PA role where she's kind of gone looking for bottles of water or things, or just managing my timetable to make sure I don't miss anything. Do you find yourself slipping into that kind of role, or is Kat pretty good at managing herself?
I definitely did early on. And then as I started having my own, this was 12 years ago when we first started dating. And then as I started having my own comics career and my own panels that I had to be on, then we sort of had to look out for ourselves a little more because I might be going to a panel at the same time that she was. I still kind of am the de facto like gopher, like getting food and drink and things for her because she's doing commission, because she's an artist. So she's sitting at the table and drawing, and it's a little bit easier for me to get in and out. And now we have a daughter, so there's also, there's a bit of like wrangling my child mixed in, and so it's but yes, certainly early on I was absolutely the assistant.
Would this have been the first year as well that you'd have been taking your daughter along with you, or is still a little bit too young, perhaps?
She's gone to small shows with us since she was a baby, and even when she was 1, I took her to when she was like 1.5. I took her to San Diego Comic-Con for just 2 hours. Because Kat was there the whole Comic-Con and I had a press junket that I needed to do. So I stayed in Los Angeles, except our daughter and I took the train to San Diego. I dropped our daughter off at Kat's table for just the hour for me to go do the press junket. Went and did the press junket, came back, got our daughter, went back on the train and came back home.
Fair enough. It's one way of doing it, I suppose. Not only that, but she dipped her toe. So, I mean, listen, she's a little bit more of a veteran than some of the people I've spoken to when it comes to San Diego, because at least she was on the floor for an hour. She was behind the table and everything.
Oh, yeah. She's an old pro at this point. She'll, especially at the smaller cons, she'll get behind tables and offer to sign autographs for people and draw pictures for people. It's very cute.
Excellent. And number 3, something that I like to ask, especially for people who have been to cons and they've gotten the opportunity to meet people that perhaps have inspired them, people that they've read growing up or have admired their work in their formative career. Those people that have made you go a little bit fuzzy in the brain and a little bit cotton-mouthed and the knees go a little bit wobbly, meeting your idols. Can you remember any that you've met and spoken to?
I mean, Gail Simone was a big one for me, and she's
her name was going to be coming up later in conversation.
How can it not? She's just lovely and amazing, and getting to know her and getting to move past the starstruckness into getting to know and love her has been really lovely. And then, of course, she and Kat did Crosswind, so they've done a creator-owned book together, so worked very intimately together. But yeah, she's definitely a guiding star in thinking about the kinds of stories that I want to tell, and being authentic and true to yourself as a writer, for sure.
That's excellent. I'm hearing animal in the background.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm outside and there's a crow.
Oh, right. Okay.
I've
no problem. Listen, it wouldn't be a video conferencing call if there wasn't some kind of cat wandering by or an animal in the background. So at least it's nature nearby, which is good.
My daughter's inside doing her piano lessons, so I thought this would be the quieter option.
There's no escape, is there?
Never.
I mean, what is LA like at the moment? I mean, what is the mood in the area? Is LA that you're based in, isn't it?
I am in LA.
Yeah,
You know, the weather's lovely. We've gone into full lockdown today again.
you have. Okay.
So today, today we're back on like the most extreme form of lockdown. Nobody's allowed to go in. You know, I mean, I don't think it's even legal for me to go for a walk right now.
Yeah.
So we're very, very, very shut down. Because the the hospitals are past the capacity that they'd like them to be.
Sure.
So we're there until then.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're staying cheerful. We've been pretty much as a family staying in since March, so it doesn't change a lot for us.
Yeah. Has it been a lot of homeschooling? And I can imagine it's been a lot of doing your best to keep everyone's spirits up, and kind of like, so if you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling down, then Kat will kind of make that support system work and kind of provide that buoyancy, vice versa, and then with your daughter as well. It's kind of like a team effort, as it were.
It absolutely is. And I think, in some ways that's where it's lucky having a child, because no matter how I feel or what I want to do, there's her life and her routine, and I have to keep things, engaging and interesting and stimulating for her. And I'm wanting her to have the best experience she can. So in a way, it forces me to do things that maybe I wouldn't normally do, which I think is actually really good for me too. Like, we are finding ways to create fun family time and do interesting activities and crafts. And yes, I have to spend, 4 to 6 hours every morning teaching kindergarten. So
Yeah.
keeps things stimulating. I'll put it that way.
I can imagine it's one of those things where it tests you. You get the kind of the questions coming in, and you get the bits and pieces from school, at which point it starts questioning your own basic math skills, and you're having to kind of think back to doing what you need to do then. Okay, so I have to teach this now. Fair enough.
Right.
What's it also been like throughout the summer for yourself and for the family in terms of consuming content of the lockdown? Because the people we've been speaking to over the course of the summer, it's been one of two things. It's either comfort food or bright and shiny. Because I know that on your social media you mentioned that Enola Holmes has been a recent obsession. So that's been rather cool. So has it been the new stuff, or have you been watching episodes of this 70 show on a regular basis? Just watching that?
For me, mostly it's been new stuff. Although with like holidays, in October we watched a lot of old like kid-friendly Halloween movies, and this month we're doing, in the evenings we're doing like family Christmas films. But otherwise for me, I like to watch something new, distract myself, find a new story to get lost in or be titillated by or frustrated by or whatever. My wife is comfort food. When she works, when she's drawing, she likes to put on familiar things that she's seen so she doesn't get distracted, and kind of have that be background noise while she draws. So we're a little bit the opposites on that one.
Isn't that always the best way for a relationship? Surely. I mean, we've got a couple of people who are jumping in on the comments. Thank you very much indeed. As always, questions for Amanda, questions for the conversation, please do dive in. Dan Berry, full lockdown for SoCal. He's in San Diego. He's, I think, they're into San Diego. I think it's coming up to a full lockdown, same drill. New ex guy, same boat. I teacher assist for 4 hours and then try and cram my life in between.
Yes.
So yes, I suspect that's the way it is. Brandon Troy saying hello. Hi, Brandon. Good to see you. Michael P saying good morning. Andrew English. Hello, all from London. And Aaron Neighbours as well. Ola from San Diego. Welcome along, everybody. I'm really curious about, the reason why I wanted to get you on the show, mostly because of all of the, like I say, the work that you've got and all the plates that you're spinning at the moment, but also your relationship with your social media in terms of your relationship with your fans. I mean, I picked up on your feed over the course of the summer, and it was very much like Gail Simone's, asking interesting questions, inspiring debate, and inspiring conversation, and that was it was a really strong feed to enjoy. But I'm really curious what your relationship is with it at the moment, and also with your fans, because I know that it's been. It really does feel at the moment, certainly with social media, it just seems very kind of fractured. People are having a very strained time with their timelines at the moment. I mean, what is your relationship with your social media, and also why Twitter? Why is that kind of like the main place for you to go?
This is such an interesting question for today, as you know, since last night. I got hacked, and I lost my account, and got it back in record time. Got it back this morning, thanks to friends who reached out to people that they knew who worked at Twitter and expedited the recovery situation of getting it back from the hacker, which I'm grateful for, because the hacker was DMing all kinds of people pretending to be me and asking for favors.
No.
Which is great. That's not at all embarrassing when you find out someone you have barely a relationship for has been hit up from a favor by you, and it's not you.
Damn.
But it's, everything has been resolved. I've reached out to everyone that the hacker reached out to and explained that it wasn't me. So I think minimal damage done, which in a way made me even more grateful for the community. I mean, I do think that social media is what you make of it. I think it can be a really toxic place, and there's certain things that you can't avoid. I mean, there's going to be like a certain amount of trolls happen. People say things that are rude or obnoxious or homophobic or whatever. But I also think that I've worked really hard to cultivate an environment that is mostly positive and warm and friendly by asking people questions, by engaging in their stories, and being genuinely interested in those stories. And I feel like that came through with the hacking, because so many people jumped in to try to help and to try to report and to offer any, communication or links or connections that they had, which is why it got resolved so quickly. So, ultimately, that made me feel really good about it. I mean, I think it's been such a lifeline for me, especially during the pandemic, when I'm not able to go hang out with my friends or go to conventions and interact with people. And like one of the really lovely things that happened this summer actually on social media is when my DC Superhero Girls graphic novel came out, Weird Science. It finally came out in bookstores in a time where LA, like now, was on full lockdown. So I couldn't go to a bookstore and see it on shelf. And it was just that moment, that kind of silly, self-indulgent thing where I wanted to go into the Barnes & Noble kids section and see my book prominently displayed and be like, oh, I worked so hard and there's a book with my name on, and cry a little bit. And that's all I wanted. And I couldn't do it because it was my first. I had been a part of anthologies or different books, but it was my first full graphic novel that was only written by me. So it was, it was a significant milestone. And somebody that I didn't know who lived in another state, who just followed me on Twitter, I didn't know she was going to do it. She made a video of herself putting on her mask, going into the Barnes & Noble, kept the camera on, was like, there's your book, now let's go buy it, bought the book, and took me with her for the whole thing. And then she just tweeted it at me, the video, and I didn't even know. And then I clicked on the video and I started crying. And it was just such a and then people started taking pictures of it in their stores, people that were in areas where they could. And then people sent me photos of their kids reading the books at home. And it was just such a lovely, such a sweet thing.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. So mostly it's something that I'm grateful for, and that I found really lovely and connecting. And then, I ask people a lot of questions, and people have been remarkably vulnerable and open in the answers.
Well, that's the thing about the feed, because I mean, you can sometimes see what the tone and direction of a social media feed is. It's either there to promote, it's there as a kind of a conduit, like you say, to let people know about the work that you're getting out, or it's something where it's somewhere for someone to vent, of which there are plenty of things to vent about at the moment. And then there's like Gail's and yourself, where certainly over summer you were asking just questions to kind of get people's ideas of things, and it wasn't just to kind of like, oh, I need some ideas about this. It was a case of, no, just let's just talk about something. Just tell me about your favorites. I don't know, anything. It was just such a great feed for that. So in that regard, then, what is your relationship with your social media and your fans? Is it mostly positive? What's the kind of the vibe when it gets, like you say, a little bit contentious?
It's the vibe is mostly positive. I mean, I'll tell you, the secret about my questions is I always word them in such a way that it aims you toward gratitude, or thinking about something that actually turned out well for you, even if it was a bad thing. I'm never asking a question that's with a negative vent slant, because I'm trying to remind people, especially right now when everything is so dark and heavy, about the things that make us feel loved, that make us feel seen, that the reasons that we do want to go on and push through and care about each other and take care of each other and take care of ourselves in a time that's very hard.
Yeah, I think it is. Oh,
no, go ahead.
Sorry, carry. Well, I mean, if anything, like I say, there's the this is the last comparison with Gail's Twitter feed, I promise. But like, you get those questions, but then Gail also is one of the most professional trolls I've ever seen in my life.
Which knows I adore.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's almost like performance art. It's fantastic. So in that regard, certainly the questions that you're putting out, those kind of faded away. I mean, they were really strong over the course of the summer, and but they kind of like, you've calmed. You haven't asked as many. I'm just wondering, is that something then that you're going to kind of dive into with your new podcast, which starts tomorrow? Is it kind of like something that you're asking those questions and starting that conversation? Is it something that's going to kind of morph into this new live feed that you're doing?
Oh, I don't think I'll ever stop doing it on Twitter. I started those questions actually in 2016. So I think I'll probably continue to do them, because it's been such like a lovely, it brings so much joy to my own life. And I feel like I really actually get to know the people that I interact with on Twitter because of their answer. Like, I suddenly know stories about people. Oh, that person, is dealing with this. That person has a child who's going through that. So I don't think that'll go away, but I am with this new podcast thing, I am going to be tapping into that vibe and those questions. I will be using those questions with the people that I'm speaking with on the podcast, and it'll kind of be, I would think of it as a continuation of the conversation versus instead of. Because I think I'll always love Twitter. You were asking earlier why Twitter, and I think it's the writer in me. It's probably why Gail enjoys it so much too. But like, it's obviously the social media platform that most caters to writers, because it is, predominantly about the written word and wordplay and jokes and, philosophical threads or what have you.
And timing as well, because I think a good thread as well, when you have that kind of that cadence and the rhythm as well. I think that definitely comes in. We might as well very quickly promote this then, considering that it is tomorrow. It's going on Spoon Radio feed. It's Cafe at the End of the World, which is a great title, by the way.
Thank you.
Mondays, 8 p.m. Pacific. You say, I mean, when you've been talking about it on social media so far, it's something that is very much still percolating in your head. It's something that's still kind of finding its form. But you say there's going to be guests involved. I mean, yes. What are you envisioning from the podcast?
So it'll be guests, a lot of friends of mine. So a lot of people across the entertainment industry, because I live in Los Angeles. That's the world that I'm in. But
I thought you were going to say, oh, and that's the world. There you go. Yes, it's the center of the universe. Haven't you heard?
Very American of me. But no, that's just where I am. So that'll be who I'm tapping into. But it'll be us discussing. I'll be bringing up some of the questions that I have used on Twitter, asking the guests. They'll be sharing their stories. I'll be sharing mine, which is something that I don't do on Twitter. I don't very often answer my own questions because I don't want to pull focus from the people who are sharing their stories. And we'll also be talking about the things that are making us happy right now, the things that are helping us cope, the things that are making us laugh, absurd stories in the news that take us out of kind of the headspace that it's so easy to fall into right now. So it's a little bit of like a lesbian mom version of Mr. Rogers, who also uses a lot of curse words.
There's your tagline. That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really curious to see how what you're going to do with the time, with the space, and I think that's going to be a really cool thing for you to do. But it's certainly something else that you're putting on your schedule and on your plate, considering that, like I say, you've got plenty of stuff that you've been doing, certainly throughout the course of the summer as well. The one that I was a particular fan of, this is where I bring the comics back into it, is the DC Digital First for Wonder Woman, which was just an amazing issue.
Thank you.
I'm curious to ask how that project came about, because the Digital First issues, number one, have just been blowing me away with the amount of talent that they've been bringing in to take part in those particular projects. But who approached who, and what was the pitch, and how did that whole project come together?
So I was approached by DC for that and asked if I would like to do a Wonder Woman story for it, which of course I jumped at and said yes. And the first ever project I ever did for DC was Sensation Comics featuring Wonder Woman, which was kind of the same kind of thing, standalone stories. I actually did a story that went in the first issue with Gales. To continually pair us up.
Yeah. This isn't a Gail Simone worshipping podcast, but it can quite happily turn into one.
But it did. But so this was fun to kind of go back to that again. And I submitted a couple pitches, but this one, the one that we went with, was one that I had been wanting to do for a long time, but it would never fit in an arc or in a traditional run, because it's very much a one-off, having to do with Amelia Earhart. And it was actually inspired by a comment that a little boy, a child of someone I know, made when watching the Wonder Woman movie. And when Steve tried, wouldn't that be a fun story? And so this was something that I've been thinking about for several years since then and playing with, and then that's how that happened.
I mean, I thought it's such a really cool story, because not only that, it's something that's, and I noticed this with most of the Digital First as well, it's something that is, apart from the main continuity, it's something that people can kind of dive in, especially younger readers as well, and just and drink in and embrace the idea of comics and the whole comic art form. I was actually curious about that whole idea of the Themyscirian's encounter with Amelia Earhart, but you didn't mention her by name actually in the script. I mean, what was the decision behind that? Was it a case of not necessarily Amelia? I mean, she's obviously incredibly important in history for her legacy, but it was the story was more about the lessons that the pair of the Themyscirians can learn from Amelia and vice versa. Was it not necessarily the person that was important, more the joining of worlds?
I'm gonna tell something that I don't know if I even should. But the truth is, in my script, her name was there, and it was accidentally left out, and I caught it, and I mentioned it to the editor, who said it was going to get fixed, and it got published without getting fixed.
Fair enough. So I'm reading so much into this.
I have no idea if I should say that or not.
Oh my lord. Okay. I've just put a lot of backstory into this, just into reading this.
But we can go with your interpretation, which was that this was purposeful, and it was to be a wink and a nudge to the readers, and everybody knew it anyway. And she's so iconic that we didn't need to say her name.
Oh lord. Okay. Fair enough. If anything, a younger reader that may not know, but mummy, daddy, who's this? Oh well, that could spin off a little bit of a.
Sure. Yeah. It was an educational opportunity that I provided to parents.
That's what you did. Completely incidentally. Oh my word! Fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, along with the another book that you came out this year was Flashbacks. Which was the 10 Terrific Tales. Not so much with the Wonder Woman story, because like you say, it is very self-contained. It's a question I've wanted to ask a number of people that have been on the podcast, and I just haven't had the bottle, but I'm going to kind of put the courage up now and say this. For people who are writing for those characters which have such a massive iconography and legacy and all this story, when you're approached to take on a character which you may be familiar with, how familiar do you feel that you have to be then with the entire lexicon? Is it more a case of the editor picking up on something that you may include that doesn't quite jibe, or do you feel that you really have to know your onions?
It's both. I mean, like, especially like the first time, going back to the Sensation comics, the first time I ever wrote Wonder Woman, there was definitely this moment of, oh, the most iconic female superhero of all time is going to be the first thing I ever write for DC. And I was like, oh God, everyone's going to hate it and hate me. She's so beloved. I could mess it up. I don't want to, there's the pressure of, you don't want to like ruin something that people love.
Sure.
And then you have to put that aside and decide the story that you want to tell and what you want to do with this character and why you love this character. And, and I think that's the more important part. And yes, there are absolutely times, I try to know as much as I can and do research. And certainly if I'm coming up with a plot line, I will check to make sure that it hasn't already happened in some obscure something that I had no idea. Because especially when they have such a long history, it can happen. But there have absolutely been times where I have pitched something or written something, and then my editor has had to say like, oh, that won't work because currently that character is doing XYZ or, whatever. And especially like with DC superhero girls and when I've written for like Teen Titans Go, when things link up with a television show, it also has to be run through their writer's room, because there have been times where I've wanted to do something with a character and we can't because it'll conflict with the storyline of the show that's coming up. Episodes I haven't even seen because they're not out yet. So there is definitely a balance of, you have to know as much as you can, and also you can't know everything. So you have to rely on your editors to catch you when you don't.
I mean, I've just got this worst nightmare of it's not one of those where it's sort of like find yourself on a stage, start naked or something kind of dreams, but it's one of those where you're asked, oh, can you write for Batman? And you come up with a story and someone turns around and goes, yeah, you clearly haven't read everything that Grant Morrison's ever written, because there's things here you can't do. Oh, right, okay, fair enough. All right, whatever. I mean, it also ties in with the work that you're doing then on He-Man, because that's got its own lore, it's got its own mythology. I mean, how clued in were you when you went into writing for that project? How much of a He-Man fan were you, and how much did you have to bone up on He-Man? Okay, I want to rephrase that.
Nope, we're sticking with it. I boned up on He-Man.
Okay, you can carry on talking now.
But it's well, because ours particularly is kind of a reboot. There are things. I mean, there's a lot that's very. I mean, obviously, you can expect that the like big tentpole characters are going to be there. There may be differences about them, but yes, He-Man is still He-Man.
Right.
But so I did rewatch some of the old episodes just for like the fun and the to get excited about it, to revisit the lore, even though some of the lore, like obviously we're doing our own spin on things. So it was less important. It was a mix. There's things you absolutely have to know about He-Man because there are things that are not going to change about He-Man. And then there was a lot of new things that we're doing or adding, or, new characters, new adventures. So again, it was a mix, but I definitely did go back and rewatch. And something that was fun for me personally is that when I was a little girl, I had a very strict religious upbringing, and I wasn't actually allowed to watch He-Man or She-Ra, or even the Smurfs, because they all had magic, and that was evil.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so it was something that I would sneak, if I was at like friend's house, or like I would sneak and play He-Man and She-Ra with the neighbors. So it was like even more tantalizing, one of those things, it's forbidden, so you love it more. So it made me probably even more excited to write on the show than I would have been had I been allowed to just consume it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, I'm really excited for like I say, I thought you were involved in the Kevin Smith project, but learning
which
that
I'm
you're
excited
part of this
about.
project. Oh, absolutely.
It's going to be great.
Absolutely. I'd like to said at the beginning, I think it's going to be interesting because of the way that we are, the metabolism for entertainment now. It's a lot faster. People and even kids, it's a case of you really have to hit the ground running when it comes to getting their attention and getting the story kind of ingested and kind of get them invested in the story as quick as you possibly can. But the thing is, when it comes to the adult side of the business, as in the actual the monetization of it and the way that Netflix and streaming services, they are wanting a long form investment in the story. So there's that kind of the balance between getting their attention as quick as possible and then having to maintain that energy. How has that changed in terms of, how's it affected your writing for a project like this, in terms of getting that energy up and running, but then also having to maintain it over a long form show?
I mean, it's definitely interesting. I mean, there's definitely like a pace now that's much quicker. These are probably, the He-Man scripts in particular are probably the tightest scripts I've ever written. It's a much lower page count. It's like, they're like 21 pages for a half-hour show, which is right. I've never written anything so tight. I mean, it is because, then the action sequences, of course, are, longer in person than on the page. But it's very tight. The pacing is, especially for kids who have grown up with this kind of consuming media. But yeah, the story just, and it's you're building off of the previous episodes, and everything's very rapid, and it is kind of different. You're definitely not taking your time and meandering through, long pondering.
Well, I mean, it was like with two of my favorite animations that came out onto Netflix was Hilda, which is just still for me one of the finest pieces of creative work ever made. It's stunning. And also Princess of Power. And it was a case that the speed was just incredible, and I was really curious to see how they were going to maintain that kind of pace, and they did, certainly with Hilda, they did an incredible job. So I'm really curious to see how the He-Man stories play out. That's really cool. But then again, the other thing that you've been working on this year, which I saw some people sharing that you've been involved in, Chapter 5 of Flash Facts.
Yes.
Terrific tales of science and technology, which is a really cool, interesting book. I mean, the reason why I wanted to bring that up is back to the whole idea of lore and mythology, because the mythology and the science of the Flash has changed so many times over the course of his character development, his history. How do you approach something like that? Especially if you are then trying to tie it to real world science.
So this book is really interesting because it is more about the actual educational aspects of things, the science, and it's the fun marriage of these comic book characters and their lore and their powers mixed with the real science. The chapter 5 that I did is more actually Jessica Cruz Green Lantern focused.
Right. Okay.
The Flash does appear in it,
okay.
But he is more of the side character on her adventure and how electricity is made.
Anytime the Flash acts as a secondary character to a Green Lantern, I've no problem with that.
But yeah, it's a fun book because it's really educational. I mean, it's definitely geared toward getting kids to learn things kind of in the sneaky way of giving it to them in a fun superhero journey. So I think it'll be fun. It's like one of those books that you could give to a child as a present and feel like you've been both responsible and given them some more comics.
You have not given them a drum kit. That's exactly what you've done. Excellent stuff. It's another really cool and interesting book. And like I say, any project which has this kind of ability to kind of not only entertain but also provide some educational backbone, I think that's really, 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 really cool. And I think we'll start wrapping things up because we want to let you get off and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. But certainly talking about what you feel you can see yourself doing more of when it comes to your writing post-pandemic in 2021, considering that this isn't going to be going away anytime soon. It is down to a case of vaccine. We are still very much in the middle of a global pandemic. It wasn't the summertime. We're still in it now. In terms of the things that are being produced, the general consensus of opinion is we're going to be seeing a lot more animation because it's a way for people to produce at home and produce remotely. Is that something that you feel that you are going to find yourself, or the necessity is going to be there for you to do more of? What do you see for your writing in this current landscape?
I mean, I hope so. He-Man is the first animated project I've ever written on, and I loved it so much. It reminds me a lot of the things that I love about comic book writing, which is just where you get to write the story and then amazing artists make it even more beautiful and fun. There are things that you can do that you can't necessarily do as easily in live action with animation and with comic books. So I've loved it. It's also really fun to sit in on the voice recording sessions. Pre-pandemic, I got to actually go in and sit and watch them in a booth. Now I get to watch them on Zoom. But it's still really fun. So I would love to do more animation. I hope that I'm doing a lot more comic books. I've got 2 graphic novels coming out next year that I can't talk about yet. Okay. But
are they creator owned or are they IP?
No, one's an adaptation of a novel that's more like for adults, and one is another for a big comic company, another IP that you're very familiar with. So yeah, fun stuff. And I think I feel fortunate that I have those skills. I hope that I get to use them in the next year, because obviously it's a lot more difficult to do some of the other things that I do right now. I did work a bit on set this summer in a very, on a very conscious production that did lots of like testing and safety protocols and whatever. But it was challenging and stressful, and obviously there's just less of them because it is more expensive to add all those extra precautions and to create content. So there's less opportunities, less things getting made, less jobs, all of that.
Sure.
So,
you've got Shelley Bond who's joining us. Hello there, Shelley. Drum kits are great gifts for kids, said a mom who has a drum kit in the living room. But listen, I can imagine your house is a pretty loud house as it is already, Shelley. And comics rule. But we knew this. I'm really curious as well to see if we'd ever see a Stag's Dibert book down the line.
we are definitely hoping to. We'd like to do some creator-owned stuff together, and I'm hoping that is something very soon on the horizon.
Because I was actually expecting you to turn around and say, "Oh no, if we work together, oh God, no, let's just keep ourselves separate. Otherwise, we'll just drive ourselves insane."
We love working together. We did Sensation Comics together. We do John Carpenter's Tales for Halloween Night every year together. And it's actually great. We have such a shorthand that it's lovely. It's also really great as a writer to be able to walk into your artist studio and see what they're doing. And it's great for her because she can literally, is this what were you meaning here? It's actually, it's really convenient when both creators are living in the same house 24/7 together.
Excellent stuff. Well, I mean, thank you so much indeed for coming on and talking to us. It's been interesting to hear about the kind of the process, especially nowadays in the current landscape, and kind of spinning so many plates and what you've got in mind. And it sounds that you're really as well keeping incredibly positive about the projects that are coming out, considering, like I say, everything's a little bit on fire at the moment. But it's great that you've been talking to us about the positivity of the whole thing. And like I say, looking forward to listening to the podcast tomorrow. Let's bring that up one more time. It's on Spoon Radio feed. How can people find this?
So Spoon Radio is an app that you can download that's free on your phone. You can also just go to Spoon Radio online, and the live stream will be right there. You don't have to join or sign up in order to listen. But if you do, then you can log in and be part of the feed and, interact live while people talk.
Excellent stuff. And last but not least, is there anything else that you want to promote? Anything else that you want to tell everyone about and point in the direction of?
Let's think. We have a book coming out in 2021, Wonder Women of History, where Kat and I worked together and did the story of Edie Windsor, who helped, had a landmark case in the Supreme Court that helped LGBTQ rights. And otherwise, I think we've talked about everything. Thank you so much. This was so fun.
It's cool. And I suppose I could, just to kind of dovetail into the next section, how big a Godfather fan are you? I know that might have come a little bit out of left field, but trust me, there's a reason.
Is this where I shamefully admit that I haven't ever seen it?
Oh, dear me. Mark, any response to that, sir?
Cut that video feed right now. I mean, I was really enjoying Amanda's chat, especially about the He-Man stuff, because I'm a huge He-Man fan. No longer will I be buying any of Amanda's stuff, having never seen the greatest film ever made.
I'll have to rectify that this week.
It's too late now, Amanda. Sorry, it's too late.
You've already, yeah. I mean, I'm also just to kind of get your thoughts on kind of director's cuts and kind of editing of stuff further down the line, because we've got the new cut of Godfather, got Snyder cut next year. I mean, is it something that you're interested in, the evolution of something once it's released, or is it a case of it's done, let's move on?
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I love a director's cut. I love to see what people will do when unfettered. If it's just left up to them. And I think it's fun, especially when it's something you love, then you get to enjoy it in a new way with some new things. I mean, I think why not? More of everything.
Listen, I'm okay with indulging of more of everything. I'm okay with that. Listen, thank you so much indeed for coming on. It's been an absolute blast, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and the best of luck with Cafe at the End of the World tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It's going to go incredibly well. Amanda, thank you so much indeed for coming on.
Thank you, and sorry to disappoint you, Mark.
Oh, listen, we like disappointing Mark. Oh my word! Listen, did you notice though? She said that and then just left instantly. There you go. She didn't want any more of the argument.
No.
So there we go. Yeah, that was rough, Mark. There you go. That's Brandon Troy with his comment.
Yeah, Brandon's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but there we go. Listen, thank you so much indeed for coming on, because I know that you wanted to talk about this new release that came out this week. I think it was Thursday, Friday, when it was. I think Friday, certainly for a cinema release, which it's incredibly rare in 2020 to have something actually hit the screens. And you did put out a tweet last week outside of an Odeon, looking very cold, and yeah, it was a bit of a cold and shivery one. I then asked if you had seen the new cut of Godfather, and you said that you would like to come on to talk about that, and also about all sorts of bits and pieces, I suppose. Let's have a bit of a spoiler-free thought then on Godfather Part 3, the saga of Michael Corleone.
No, nothing like nowhere near it. No, nowhere near.
Go on then. Go on.
It's the Godfather Coda, the death of Michael Corleone, which was meant to be the original title of the film. That's what Coppola wanted. It's what Puzo wanted. However, obviously Paramount Pictures really pushed Coppola into making Part 3 because it's a nice tie-in. It's a trilogy, great, but obviously Coppola didn't want that, and he's forever said, "Look, Part 3 is not Part 3; it's an epilogue. You shouldn't see it as a kind of a Part 3." So he's gone back 30 years, exactly 30 years actually this month since it opened, and he's re-edited it, much like with Apocalypse Now Redux, and then the final cut as well.
Right.
He also did it with the Cotton Club as well, which that edit was slightly more bizarre. This time,
did he?
Yeah. Only in the US though, not in the UK.
That's why. Okay, I didn't know there would have been a re-edit of that film. Okay.
Yeah. This time he has reduced the runtime. He has changed the beginning. He's changed. He's slightly tweaked the end, and some scenes in the middle are in slightly different order. There's a different musical score for certain bits as well. So it's not a hugely different film. We're not talking of Kingdom of Heaven director's cut here, which is infinitely better than the normal version. What we're talking here now is a film that's zippier. It plays quicker. It gets to the point quicker. So I think for anybody who is of that mindset of, the Godfather Part 3 is absolutely a terrible film, this will play better for them, certainly, because it's a much quicker film. It really is. It's 2 hours, 2:30 something or other. So it's weird. I was watching it last night and I was thinking, if this was the version that had come out in 1990, people would have said, there's a great ending. Yes, it can't live up to 1 and 2 and whatever else, but it's a great ending. And all of the people in it are fantastic, and everybody else and everything else like that. And then if they'd have released the one that came out in 90 now, people would have gone, oh, it's nice to see extended scenes. So it's an interesting reversal, which we don't see that often.
That was going to be the question. Is this something that has improved it? Because we've got, like I mentioned in the segue, the Snyder cut on the way. We've had multiple iterations of Star Wars and what George Lucas has been doing or did do with the trilogy moving forward. And it's a question that I've asked on a couple of panels, and I've asked a couple of creators as well. That whole sense of is it a case of art being abandoned, or is there a case of that sense of just I've done what I can with it. I've created this piece, let it fly, let it go, and if it flies, it flies. If it lives and dies on its own merits.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It gets there's got to be a point where creators turn around and say, we've got to release it, otherwise you'll never release it. It will never be released, because you'll always be tweaking it, you'll always be changing it. There's always something in there where you're like, oh, maybe I should change that. So at some point it's got to be released. And that's why ultimately, as much as people bitch and moan about studios and whatever else, they put a time frame on something. They say, right, look, you've got to give it to us by this point so we can put it out. So this gives a bit of pressure. Now granted, you know, Coppola having 12 months back in 1988 to write it, film it, edit it, and give it to the studio is an insane amount of time. 12 months to make Godfather Part 3 is ridiculous. But to have somebody turn around and say, right, you've got to put it out, puts a time limit on it. And I think that's what creators need. Otherwise, as I said, you'd just be constantly tweaking it. I mean, the good thing is, you know, you talking about Star Wars, we're obviously talking about Coppola doing Apocalypse Now and Zack Snyder going back and doing Justice League. These films have made their money back. They've made them back sevenfold, and ultimately they're now sat in maybe not so much Justice League, I guess, but certainly a lot of these are just sat in a dusty warehouse of a studio, and the director comes and says, listen, I'd like to go back and do it. It's going to cost you, I don't know, £10 million. They're going to say, well, we made 10 million this year on sales and streaming. So it's nothing to them. That's the thing. It's just time. I like the idea of going back to it decades later after time has moved on. You know, obviously with The Godfather Part 3, everybody hates it because of Sofia Coppola. I think she's perfectly fine in the Part 3.
I mean, we've got Michael Pease joining us. Godfather Part 3 was dreadful. I think that's a difficult thing to say, purely because Parts 1 and Part 2 are such epic and monumental pieces of filmmaking. It's a little bit like people slagging off The Phantom Menace. At the end of the day, you are comparing it against Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and The Return of the Jedi. 3 historic pieces of film. I tried my best, and I have gone back and I've watched The Phantom Menace purely as a film, someone coming in and watching it with no expectations whatsoever. And trying to separate from the rest of the saga, and The Phantom Menace holds up. I think The Godfather Part 3 holds up. There are I mean, if anything, because for myself, it actually asks the bigger questions of redemption, of
Michael,
where we were with Michael when he first started at the very beginning of The Godfather as someone coming out of the military who had a very strong moral code, trying to reclaim that person that he was in the first 20 minutes of Godfather Part 1. So I think there's so much that it's trying to do, and somehow it kind of works. But the thing that I want to move into in the conversation is with Godfather Part 3, or the Coda of Michael Corleone. That is a project that Coppola came to on his own accord. I don't think any of us saw it coming. And yeah, it just came out of pretty much nowhere. So then there's the director who has a feel to create and to complete the project. And then there's fan pressure. Then there's the other side of the coin, the entitlement of an audience to have the film that they want. And we're getting that with Zack Snyder, which that film, or that 6-part HBO series, will not be coming out if it wasn't for this massive groundswell online. What do you see in terms of benefits? What do you see is necessary? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that's a whole other ball game, let's face it, because you're not taking an original film and tweaking it slightly by adding slight scenes or removing scenes or putting a new score in there only and putting an extra 20 minutes or reducing it by 20 minutes. You're talking about another 4 hours of a film. So ultimately this is a brand new film. That's how it should be treated. Certainly it will be by me. because this is, you know, he's gone and spent an inordinate amount of money to get all of those people back and to make it how it wants to be, or his vision. Let's face it, it's his vision. And yes, it's unfortunate he had to drop out, and I completely understand that. However, at the time, they brought somebody in who knows the universe, knows the nerd universe,
knows the characters, knows the landscape. Yeah.
And you know, when it was announced, I think everybody went, "Yeah, good choice." Yeah, no, fine.
It wasn't his first rodeo. Let's put it that way.
Exactly, that's the thing. Yes. So I think Zack Snyder going back on the basis of fan pressure is, I guess, on one hand, it's good that he gets to put out his own vision. That's the thing. That's his own vision. Great, fantastic. But on the other side, it's problematic, because then where does this stop? Where is the line drawn in the sand? When are you going to turn around and say, you know what we need? We need the Martin Brest cut of Gigli. That's what we need. The 2.5 hour cut of Gigli, where Gigli dies at the end. I mean, you know, it's getting to that level. And I think that's the worry, is that there are so many stories out there about studio interference, that have meddled with films, taken it off directors as well, recut it. Hello, Miramax. And it gets to a point where you're like, does anybody need this? You know, it's like, who was it? Director of Suicide Squad. I saw in the summer.
Oh, yes.
Somebody had said to him about another version. He said, yeah, well, you know, I put together my cut. It's very different. And then all of a sudden there was this thing of, yeah, no, we should see this. We need to see it. And he's turned around and said, why would you see it? It's too late. It's gone. You know, and this goes back to what you were saying, actually, Leonard, is at some point creators have got to let it go. You've got to let it go. That's it. It's out in the world. It's done. And the thing is, people turn around and they go, well, you know, there was a 3-hour cut of Suicide Squad. It's like, yeah, there will be, because those are the rough assembled cuts. That's how it works. You get it 3 hours, then you trim it down. You keep trimming, and then you've got a finished version. Eventually, you can go back and put bits. But, you know, having fan edits, I guess that's what you call it. I wouldn't know what else you would call it. Director.
Yeah.
It's difficult to know. Is, as I said, it's bordering on problematic, because where does the line draw in the sand? Because, listen, you hate a film, but there might be loads and loads of other people out there who love the film.
Sure.
So,
I mean, for myself, it's a case of, and I think I put this. There was an interview with somebody, and they were asked about the entitlement and the where the influence of a fan's groundswell goes into creative endeavors. And for myself, it really is a case of the moment that an audience starts dictating to a filmmaker or to a studio what a film needs to be, that's when art effectively dies, because it's then art by committee. I think it's because I'm a big what's the name of the film about Da Vinci doing the Sistine Chapel, and he's is it the Power and the Glory? I think
I thought you were talking about Hudson Hawk then.
No, well, yes, okay, that's a whole other story of another cracking piece of art. But that the whole idea of commerce driving creative endeavors, when you are effectively then just a journeyman for the audience.
Well, so, you know, that's a good point, actually, and that leads me back to something, actually. And we know now for a fact that Joss Whedon was heavily pushed by Marvel when he was making Avengers: Age of Ultron. Like that was what you were saying, which was directed by committee. That you can see in some of the interviews that he gave at the time and since, where he's turned around and said, you know, I had real trouble trying to do this or trying to do that. And I think that was probably the first time where we really saw the creative hands from the boardroom in terms of Marvel movies. Now, obviously, you know, Marvel movies are, yeah, great. They're directed by people, but it still feels like it's sort of directed from the boardroom. They've all got the same color palette. We can't change that. Absolutely not. And I think Age of Ultron was the first film where it sort of came out that you were like, okay, yeah, I'm digging this. This is a big.
It was serving so many masters.
It was, absolutely. I like it. I think it's a very good film. But when Whedon comes out and talks about it, and listen, I know it's problematic to talk about Joss Whedon at the moment, but it's an example that he was being pushed into certain things. He had creative freedom on the first one, basically. And now they make it massive. And they go, can you do another one? Yeah, no problem. But we need you to do this. We need to do that. We need you to put these people in as well. And then all of a sudden he's having all of these exterior influences come into him for a script that him and a couple of his, colleagues have written. It's tough. It's tough. Yeah. I mean, granted, you are working for Marvel, so they do expect a certain amount of money back. But creative freedom at the big studios certainly seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, we've got a couple of comments. Brandon Troy's watching. Daredevil director's cut is better.
Valid point.
It is a very much a valid point. I mean, like I say, when it's the person themselves that's made something that feels that they can improve on it. Alien, the director's cut of Alien, admittedly, that works for people who have actually already seen the film. It's just tighter, it's sharper, it moves faster. It's just, it's just the way it works. He also mentions that we might be getting another cut of Bohemian Rhapsody, per the editor John Ottman, in lieu of the initial troubled theatrical cut. God. As long as there's a professional in the editing booth, because how that got nominated for best editing is beyond me. There was that, I don't know if anyone saw when it got nominated for best editing. Someone actually then just posted the scene of the record executive meeting the band in the you know what I'm on about.
You know exactly what I'm about. I bring it up all the time. All the time. It's the worst piece of editing ever.
Awful, truly awful. Marcy Brett, it's incredibly hard to go back and re-edit something. What we're seeing now represents his mindset now as much as more than his mindset years ago. You can't ignore what's happened to your viewpoint or your career in the years since. Correct, but I get a sense of he's very emboldened. He knows he's got the internet behind him. He knows he's got an entire movement which created the hashtag that got everyone talking. That's a lot of influence he can then impose on Warner Brothers, on HBO, to then give him 6 films or a 6-part new director's cut. You see in interviews that there's a definite change in the tone from years before to where we are in 2020. Interviews with Zack Snyder, he's got some juice there from this groundswell of support from the fans. It's a real different approach, and this is why I think this particular film has stirred up so much conversation, because in the past it's a case of the fans exerting influence on a director and a studio and whatever. Here it's the director joining in as well and throwing the eggs and the rotten fruit at the studio walls, and it's worked. That's the thing. It's the thing that it's the fact that it's worked.
The thing is, as well, talking about this, obviously we'll talk about it next year when it comes out a bit more, but let's face it, this film was going to be the big seller for HBO Max. Hey, if you're in the US, subscribe to HBO Max, you can get it on there. That's where you'll get it. And everybody went, yeah, great, fantastic. And then this week, Warner's just went, yeah, that film, you're going to get all the films ever.
You see, you beat me to my own segue. Thank you so much indeed for that, Mark. But no, there was that announcement this week.
Yeah.
One or two sites getting it slightly wrong or misreading the announcement, that they seem to feel that every single film for 2021 is going to be released on the same day. Okay, you may have just slightly misread that. But no, it's same day theatrical and streaming is how HBO Max are going to be doing this. It's also interesting that they're not going to be charging anything extra, unlike Disney Plus, who put on a premium for Mulan. It is going to be part of the subscription package. What's your thoughts on that in particular?
It's difficult to know.
Is this a way for them to possibly recoup any kind of loss? Because for me, I don't think it's enough.
The thing is, and I was reading this today, they were talking about Wonder Woman 1984, comparing it to the Tenet release, and how Wonder Woman 1984 is going to go on to HBO Max and in cinemas. So basically, the cost is split. So some of that production cost is going to go toward HBO Max will have to pay for it. Now, in order to break even for that film, it's going to need to do an extra 40% of what Tenet did. Globally, that's just in the US. So that's, you're talking about 500 million in the US it needs to do. I don't know what the split would be behind the scenes with HBO Max and how they return that revenue to Warner Brothers. That would be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how it works. I mean, great for anybody who's got HBO Max. Great, fantastic. You know, you're probably like, I'm not going to go to the cinema ever again. You'll miss that cinema experience, especially seeing, I mean, who doesn't want to see Dune on the big screen? Holy shit. I mean, man, God, it's there. It's IMAX. Fuck, I've got to see it. But other films, and you know, I talked about this previously, and I've talked about it a lot. Other films which would have gone to theaters and probably made 30 million, something like that, because they're on streaming, they will probably make 70 or 80 million. So you're instantly making a good deal of money. And this all comes down to Trolls World Tour. Trolls are the ones to blame, because that film was going to go in cinemas, and then obviously the world caught on fire. And Universal turned around and said, right, we're going to put this on streaming. You've got to pay for it, whatever it was, $15, $20, whatever. And it made like $150 million globally. And suddenly everybody went, hang on a second, we're cutting out the middleman here, which is the cinemas. We can do all of this and we get all of the money. So it's changed the industry a lot all of a sudden. And Warner's have always changed the industry, actually. They were very big in pushing VHS, for those of us who are old enough to remember it. They were big people to promote DVD as well. They were the main company to promote DVD outside it as well. So them doing something like this is not huge from there. You know, they're used to shaking the apple cart a little bit. I'm just curious to see how it plays out in terms of films on the big screen, and who's going to go when you can subscribe at home for whatever the money is. I don't know what you pay to subscribe to HBO Max, but it's certainly going to be an eye-opener for a lot of people.
I brought it up in conversation with my brother that also likes to kind of stir the pot a little bit with me. He likes to kind of get my hackles up. Thank you very much, you do to my brother Paul. But he then brought up a good point as the films that are coming out, which ones would have been making any kind of money online anyway? In cinemas anyway. And I think the best way to actually approach it is then actually have a look at the films that HBO Max are going to be showing from Warner Brothers over the course of 2021. So let's go quickly through the list. We've got The Little Things, which is January 29th. Tom and Jerry. I mean, that's possibly... Yeah. I mean, I quite like the trailer, actually.
Yeah, me too.
Many Saints of New York. Okay. This is a kind of a prequel that I think possibly could have gone straight to streaming anyway. Remnants, get it right, which is Hugh Jackman's new project with Rebecca Ferguson. There's a tentpole movie. There you go. Godzilla versus Kong, which if anyone was going to be going to cinemas to see something on a big screen, that would have been the film or one of the films to see. I'm trying to do the balance. I'm trying to work out what films offset the loss of cinema, if that makes sense. The Conjuring, that's maybe more a cinema thing as well, but people quite like the idea of being at home in the dark watching a horror movie. In the Heights, which is the adaptation of Lin-Manuel Miranda's sensation. Space Jam: A New Legacy, in the summer. Yes, The Suicide Squad is one of the big, was going to be one of the big cinema releases. And then again, we are talking July and August at this point. And you can kind of hope that some kind of cinema normality will be back. But they have committed to all of the films in 2021 coming out simultaneous on HBO Max, including Dune, King Richard, which is Will Smith's film, The Matrix 4, Judas and the Black Messiah, and yay, Mortal Kombat. There it is. Those Who Wish Me Dead, and then we're getting into sort of like the real back end of the year. So the question then is that balance between those films which would not have made as much money on the cinema screen and HBO Max, that subscription model can kind of cover some of that. Then you're talking those big tentpole movies which will have taken a hit from people not going into the cinemas. Is this enough to recover that kind of investment?
It depends on their subscription numbers, doesn't it? I think that's the thing. Disney Plus.
If you were talking for each film, yes, but I think for the majority, it's people who are going to sign up for Wonder Woman, and that's your 12 months.
Yeah, probably. Well, it's the Disney Plus syndrome, isn't it? You can have a deal for 12 months initially, but then how do you keep people beyond that? That's the problem. Especially if they turn around and say, right, in 2022, we're going back to the old schedule for the big tentpole blockbusters.
We'll get into that in a second. The future of this whole model. You've got Aaron Neighbours, Godzilla for the win. There you go. I put some money on Kong. Never knocked the big Abe out. It's all about, listen, I can tell you right now, some of that weight, it helps with momentum. And Dan Berry, $15 a month or so for HBO Max. So
fair price.
Tenner, just over a tenner.
Yeah.
Mark Searby, with the conglomerates now controlling both the studios and distribution through streaming, we're back to monopolies of movie production as well as TV. That's a whole other conversation, and you're absolutely right. Yeah, it is something else. Yeah. 2021. Simultaneous release, streaming and in cinemas for the film slate. Is this the new model moving forward?
It's difficult to know, isn't it? Nobody's really going to know until the end of next year.
Thoughts, Mark?
I genuinely don't know, because it really depends on numbers. This is the thing. You can't turn around and go, yeah, this is going to be the future. You can see it being the future for a lot of mid to lower level films, and that's happened a lot here in the UK actually this year, where a lot of films where I've been like, oh great, yeah, fantastic, you can get it on demand, but also you can go to the cinema to see it. I mean, a lot of British films have had that this year. Actually, it's been a great year for British films because we've been able to see them rather than pulling them back. They've embraced, right, let's put it on streaming, and people have gone, what, that's on streaming? We thought it was going to be in the cinema. Like, no, we want people to see it. Here, pay £10. So it's worked really well here in the UK, I think, for British films. For your big tentpole films, that's a whole other conversation, and it really comes down to a bottom end, how that money is going to be filtered back. It's a bold move from Warner's. I always mention this to a friend the other day, is that it's bold move from Warner's. I like the fact that they've done it. This is great. Here in the UK, we don't get any of that at all. It's only in cinemas still. And actually, that will be the same around the world, apart from the US, I believe. But is it the future? It's a good question. I'm going to wait and see what Disney does, because they're the ones who are very reactive to stuff, but almost too slow for stuff. You know, the Mulan thing was
they are very much the Apple of this whole scenario, aren't they?
Yeah, the Mulan thing was badly fudged, let's face it. I mean, you know, it's a great film. Why would you put it on as premium? Put it up there. You know, they've done it with Soul. I mean, Soul is going to Disney Plus on Christmas Day.
Indeed, they proved that it worked with Hamilton. Hamilton got announced, the subscriptions went up. People wanted to see Mulan, they will have subscribed.
Exactly.
There you go.
The problem is,
That's what HBO are gambling on.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem is they're only gambling in the US, whereas these films are international. So them looking at just being US centric is not good for their bottom end. That's the thing. Tenet, granted, okay, it's a slightly different situation because Tenet didn't really open in the US, but even if it had have done, Nolan's films make more money internationally than in the US. They always have done, even The Dark Knight and everything else like that. But some of those films that are on that list that you just had there, Leonard, they're US centric films. So what are they going to do internationally to bunk up that money, basically? Because I want to see the Many Saints of New York. I'm a huge Sopranos fan. I adore that show. But as you said, that's sort of a streaming film. So going to HBO Max works perfectly. Not a problem. So that might bunk up the numbers a bit more. Great. But what happens after that? Where does it go?
Well, I mean, we've got Andrew English who's saying, fingers crossed for a cinema release of Godzilla. That's a film you want to see on a big screen, and I get it. I absolutely get it. Brandon Troy is saying, I would argue that these films might make money. Mortal Kombat has made a resurgence in popularity thanks to the last few games. And does say, Mark, Disney doesn't have to rush because they're in a different position than other streamers. Unlike other streamers, they own all of their library instead of paying a licensing fee. It's a great point.
Yep.
Great point. So there we go. I know it's difficult to kind of cast some kind of crystal ball on all of this. And we're only going to kind of, in fact, we're going to find out how this is going to play out literally in the first couple of months of 2021, because we have films coming out which are going to show how well this model is going to work on the December 25th. We'll find out exactly how many people will sign up for HBO Max for Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah.
We're going to find out in a couple of weeks' time how this model is going to play out. But I think for myself, and it was a question I've been asking people over the course of the summer, when the numbers and the money is not coming in the quantity that it has in the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever years, does that mean that we have seen the end of the $200 million film? Are we going to be seeing smaller films? Are we going to be seeing more independent? Is cinema going to become more of a boutique market?
Do you know what? That's a really good question, actually. And it's something that I thought about the other day. I think your $200 million, well, top end, let's say that, I think you're still going to see them. I think they're still going to finance them. But I think films like Shazam, that are sort of, I would call second tier movies, are just not going to be financed at all.
Shall I tell you what I think we're going to see? We are going to see these films, but I think the way they're going to be made is going to be different. When The Mandalorian is coming out each week, or the production value of The Mandalorian, when you can stick people inside of a big cube and film in any location anywhere, just by projecting it up onto a screen, I think the production value is still going to be there. I think the budgets are going to drop. I think we're going to see a change in the way these films are made. Yeah. I certainly don't think we're going to have the same. I don't know. It's such a strange setup.
I think, you mentioned it. I think it's going to be probably good news for lower budget films, I have to say. I think about films like Good Times, the Robert Pattinson film, which is a great film. Nobody saw it. Stuff like that, which is out there. It's low budget. It's grounded. It's gritty. Stuff like that. I think we're going to see a lot more of that because they're cheap to make and throw them out, and they can probably get a talent like a Robert Pattinson or like a Chris Evans or whoever it is to want to go and make some of these smaller stuff away from the bigger films, which some of them have done, some haven't. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that, which is great, because that's when you get, and this goes back to what we were talking about actually about directors. this is when you get directors being given the freedom, because the studio go, yeah, it's only cost us 50 million, so we didn't really care. We didn't, we looked at it and yeah, fantastic, that's it, great, here's the film. And you go, actually, do you know what, that's a really good film. It shows some really good talent. So I think we'll probably see a lot more of that, which is good, because we have, let's face it, we have been inundated with the big blockbusters for the past decade now. And a lot of other films have gone by the wayside, which have eventually found an audience on Netflix, and people have gone, I wish I'd have seen this on the big screen. It would have been great. Snowpiercer is a prime example, something like that. The Raid, another prime example, so hopefully that's the outcome, which means we still get a good amount of films. We just get films that maybe, with the big blockbusters in the 70s, you think about films like Coppola made or Lucas made or Scorsese was making. Maybe we get back to that stage. Real directors.
Yeah. Andrew English, The Rest of the World, straight to DVD. I don't know what the arrangement is with these films, the Warner Brothers HBO Max films. I don't know what, I know the idea is that we're still going to get them in cinemas. Aren't we in the same boat as the Americans are? There's a case of people still not entirely convinced about going to the cinema until we have the vaccine or something that's going to convince people to leave their houses.
I can say that here in the UK, the deal that Warner's have with Sky lasts for another 4 years. So it's highly doubtful we're going to get HBO Max at any point here in the UK, but I know they're trying to roll it out across other territories. But here, we're not going to get it. So it will probably continue to be cinemas, and then maybe on Sky Cinema for a premium 2 months later or something. That's
maybe.
Yeah.
Marcy Brett's, so much of the movie budgets are marketing and overtime because of rush post-production. Without that sucking up the budget, perhaps high quality production can still be done. Andrew English, if everything went the way of Mandalorian, cities around the world would feel it. Montreal certainly would. Brandon Troy, will be interesting, Mark, to see what happens with smaller films because they don't have the resources to ensure that they are adhering to COVID protocols. That's coming from a whole other angle. That's an interesting one. Excellent stuff. Listen, everyone, thank you very much indeed for your comments on this. I know we had a light and fluffy interview with Amanda earlier. This was a little bit heavier, but it's asking some big questions of something that we're going to be finding out the solutions, or certainly the outcomes of, in a couple of weeks' time with the release of Wonder Woman 1984. Mark, thank you so much indeed for coming on. It's been a pleasure, as always, to see you, sir. Even if Amanda did upset you straight out the gate,
it's fine.
You can feel that energy, that kind of.
Fine. I'll send her a tweet in a bit. It's fine.
Yeah, the edging of the shoulder forward. You're gearing for a fight. I get it. But it's been a pleasure seeing you. Thank you so much indeed for coming on. Can you tell people where people can find you online?
I'm on Twitter, Mark_Searby. You can find my website, marksearby.com. You can find my couple of books, one about Al Pacino and one about the British comedian Rick Mail. They're available on Amazon and all other places where you can get good books. And then radio film reviews Friday on Phoenix FM here in the UK. You can listen to these online as well. And Saturday here in the UK on BBC Radio Suffolk.
Excellent stuff indeed. And for myself, of course, you can follow me on Englishman SGCC. You can keep a track on what I'm doing with the podcast by following me on Twitter mostly. And I will be giving you more updates on the guests that we've got coming up, which I can say I'm particularly happy about. We have ourselves some cool ones coming up in the next couple of weeks. Admittedly, we are going to be taking a bit of a break over the course of the Christmas week. More of that to come, so do keep your eyes on my social media. I'll be announcing and rolling out all the details later on this week. So, from Amanda Deibert, from my very good guest, Mark Searby, and from myself, Leonard Sultana, thank you so much indeed for watching. Hopefully you can join us on Saturday for an incidental episode, which I'm really very much looking forward to. Same time, 10 p.m. 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT. I'm very tired. I'm going to go to bed. I will see you next week for another Talking Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. From me, from Mark to you, take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.